Comedian Steve Martin used to walk out on stage with one of these on his head. Got a laugh every single time. But little Josh Davidson got a real arrow shot through his head, and nobody laughed.
9-year-old Josh Davidson and his family loved archery. That is, until Josh was skewered through the head by an arrow.
My first thought was that my son's dead. That's exactly what I thought. He's dead. There's no way.
Whenever the Davidsons took their son to the archery range, safety was always stressed. But on this day, little Josh was distracted by a bad case of poison ivy. He sat down near the target to scratch his itching feet.
The wife, Dolly, she told Josh to get up, go back here where it's a little safer, instead of sitting right here on the range.
Just as Josh stood up to move out of the way, another archer accidentally released an arrow. Josh walked directly into its path, and with the arrow moving at 200 feet per second, there was no time for Josh to react. His parents looked up in horror to see the arrow had gone straight into their son's head and was sticking out both sides.
Well, being in the military, I've seen some pretty bad things overseas, but I never expect to see a small child hurt the way I seen that day. To this day, it's probably the worst thing I've ever seen.
Unbelievably, Josh was still conscious. He was screaming in intense pain. It took every ounce of the family's courage to keep their son calmly on the ground until the ambulance arrived. The Davidsons rushed their son to a local hospital, only to learn the doctors there were unable to help him. He had to be airlifted to Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis, an agonizing 60 minutes away.
If the arrow had been aimed lower, it would have entered what we call the brainstem, could have rendered him unable to move at all.
The medical staff had to act quickly, but carefully. X-rays showed that the arrow had miraculously missed any vital parts of the brain, but the arrow still needed to be pulled out slowly to avoid any damage or excessive blood and cranial fluid loss. His parents feared the worst.
Well, I was thinking about everything. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got to have a funeral. I've got to arrange a funeral. And I thought, no, I can't think this way. I've got to think positive.
It took an hour and a half to slowly inch the arrow out. The surgeons were concerned that swelling during the healing process would leave the boy paralyzed. Josh floated in and out of consciousness for the next few days.
I prayed to God that if he was going to take Josh, to take me. You know, spare him, let him do the things that needs to be done. Let him have his life.
And while it took nearly a year for Josh to fully recover, incredibly, he pulled through. Now, years later, he remembers just how close he came to dying.
I didn't get to the gates, though. I guess they didn't want me in there.
Unbelievably, the accident has not scared Josh from picking up a bow again. In fact, he even worked summers at the very same archery range where he nearly died.
I didn't want to be afraid of it. They needed help back there, so I went and put in an application. They hired me.
When Josh isn't working, he spends time with his girlfriend and family. This teenage survivor is leading a very normal life.
The little guy's fought death and won. He looks like he's invincible. He's been there. He's come back. He's not afraid of anything.
Josh still holds on to a piece of that arrow as a keepsake from his triumphant battle. But it serves only as a chilling reminder for his father.
I'm not real comfortable holding this. One look at this and in one sentence tell you what it means. We almost lost our kid.